All right, so hopefully this is recording. Apparently the sound cut out, so this is my part two of today's wackety thing. If people who are here, you can hear me now. It's working again, and maybe just need to be reset or something. If you can hear me, like put a thumbs up or just say I can hear you. Yeah, okay, great. Okay. So that's the thing with technology. It doesn't always function, the way we want it to. So I'm going to change the microphone. Okay. So where was I? I was at the hot part. I was at the shitty part. So a lot of you probably knew me from when I used to work with a person named Tada Hazumi or Tadaki Hazumi, a Japanese person who invented this thing or this term called cultural somatics, which is basically just an idea. It's like a repackaged animism. That like cultures have bodies and we can treat bodies like they have nervous systems and stuff like that, right? And you might have noticed that in the past year, I've completely cut off all contact with this person. After I worked with them really, what I would consider intimately, for multiple years. I mean, I was this person's basically coach, therapist, guide person. And I tried to help them get past a lot of their personal issues, and it didn't really work out. And it's partially why I don't do a lot of private sessions anymore, because people have shown me time and time again that they will take the information from the private session and twist it, fold it into their addiction, fold it back into their narcissism, and then act like I gave them permission to do that. But I didn't, and I was like, yeah, that's a misinterpretation of what I'm saying. And I've had to become much more cutthroat and much more fierce and angry because I've been abused by people who tell me that I'm the bad guy too many times in the last few years, and then try to use my ethnicity and against me, and also try to say that they have more understanding of my ethnicity than I do. Now, for someone who's just spent a whole hour or so saying that you have to go past your identity, you might think, well, it's like, shouldn't you be not pissed off about this? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, let me get real clear on what's happening here. This isn't merely some kind of like black pride thing, although there's maybe a few drops of that in there, because you shouldn't try to steal someone's heritage from them. You shouldn't try to take their identity away from them and say that you own or like have more power than they do. So there's a little bit of reality of going, that's not okay. You can't do that. But it's very hard to deal with people who are on a pedestal of their own making that is propped up by essentially cultish followers who are then weaponizing their heritage against you and playing some kind of crazy dominance game, and then trying to gaslight you about your own lived experience. And this is what happens to me with other marginalized or other mixed race or other colored folk all the time. All the fucking time. There will eventually come a point where they can't deal with the complexity and the non-binary, non-dual thing that I'm talking about, and they will go insane. They will go completely insane. And they will start saying things like, I'm anti-black, like me, I'm anti-black, I'm anti-indigenous, I'm a white racist, like just crazy shit. Just the amount of insanity that I've had to deal with on a continual basis, and by being a semi-public figure, there's a lot of skin shaming in this game where they no one wants me to say what I'm saying because of the way I look. When I talk about non-dual practice, they say, you can't do that because you're not Tibetan. When I talk about a kind of indigenous or Afro or like ancient history collective, like because I've researched ancient hunter-gatherer tribes, or I've done the ancestral work, they say I can't talk about that because I'm not black. I can't talk about that because I'm not technically Mayan, because I have no tribal affiliation, because I'm just a Puerto Rican American. I don't know what I'm talking about. And they will constantly try to tell me that I'm insane because they want to have power over me and their followers on this fucking platform. And so I'm about to be 43 years old. And I've dealt with this craziness my whole life. I'm sure some of you have too. And the only way I can see to combat it is to become more bold with the truth more often, even if that gets me killed. Because how these people operate and how they maintain any semblance of fake power that they have is through a kind of secrecy network where you're not allowed to talk about certain things. And I'm really tired of that because we need to be able to talk about everything. And if you get triggered by it and you're not up to speed and able to digest it, that is not necessarily my problem. If you're a crazy person with a gun, it becomes my problem. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a bunch of hurt, marginalized people with trauma, taking that trauma out on other people with trauma. And at a certain point, somebody's got to stop the cycle. And that person usually, in most cases, is me. Because I understand what it's like to be an addict and make harmful choices when you're in an addictive kind of spiral. So I have empathy and understanding, but at a certain point, I know that the best defense is to cut off communication and to cut off intimacy, because when you are left alone with your issues and there's no more people in your codependent circle to give you feedback, you really have to face your demons. So I am all about letting people face their demons, even if it kills them, because it is a really fast way to disengage from the energy vampire stuff that's going on and to not give them any more social power by your association. So I disassociate in a funny way, but I disassociate, as in I no longer associate with a lot of people, and they no longer associate with me, and I'm totally fine with that. Because of their narcissism and the way that they play the social justice racial game, which is harmful and not liberatory for all beings. Because when you think about children, those children are not yet indoctrinated into the harmful, racialized defense mechanisms that adults are. And if you are going to really tell me that children are racist or children are kind of have a race, I'm going to say you've never worked with kids. Because when you work with really young kids, they are just little baby animals, and they all look different, and every little baby animal loves every other little baby animal. They appreciate the differences, and they're curious about the differences. They have not yet learned to weaponize the differences. And when you weaponize your differences, you get the mess that we're in. And there are so many people, so many teachers who you all fetishize, like Bayo Komalafe, Resma Menaken, etc., who you fetishize without understanding why you fetishize them, who are weaponizing their culture against you to gain more power because they just want money to survive just like everybody else. And I encountered this with Tada, I encountered this with Resma, I encountered this with Bayo, I encountered this with a lot of other people, many white people. I don't need to say the white people's names because this one, I'm really talking about how fucked up our solidarity is not there as marginalized and mixed race people. It's not there. There's too many black and indigenous and native and Spanish and whatever you want to call Latinx people who are still interested in weaponizing their racialization against everybody else that they want. And they only want followers and fetishists, and they don't want liberation. And I encountered this every day on the internet. And they succeed because there's a culture now, a subculture, where you're not supposed to disagree with black people, and you're not supposed to disagree with native people, and you're not supposed to disagree with women. This isn't liberation. In liberation, we should be able to have collectivism and disagreement at the same time. But nobody's there yet. Nobody's fucking there yet. And when they get into stressful situations, they default to their colonizer mentalities and hide behind their marginalization. The colonizer mentality says that I can dominate you because I want to. That's the colonizer mentality. I can take what I want, whether that is space or land or air or resources or status. I can take what I want away from whoever I want because I think I need to survive. That's a colonizer. And that behavior, you see it in people that are black and indigenous and brown and Asian. You see it. You see them hurting people. I mean, look at the Chinese government, for crying out loud. They're totally disappearing people all the time. But we're supposed to be okay with it because they're not white. And they're supposedly communist. But they're disappearing people all the time, just like the American government is. See, this is what I mean by saying you have to look at the behaviors. You cannot hide behind racialization and identity. You have to look at behaviors. You have to look at behaviors. Look at Kanye West, that bipolar-ass motherfucker. You can't tell me he's not possessed by the spirit of white supremacy. He's totally bonkers. But he is a black man, and we should respect that he is a black man, and he has had the problems of being a black man in America. But he's also completely fucking bonkers at this point, and he shouldn't be trusted. And you can't just go, well, he's a black man, so we should just listen to what he has to say. This is the same nonsense. Like, this is part of when it started to fracture between me and Tada, is when Dave Chappelle started coming out with all of his anti-trans bullshit. Dave Chappelle's a black man. He has black man problems. I know he's an addict. I've seen him on the streets of San Francisco. I used to live in San Francisco. Coming out of the clubs. I worked in a club. I understand. It's hard to be an addict. It really is. But you cannot hide behind that. You can't hide behind your trauma, your marginalization. So when Dave Chappelle started doing all this anti-trans shit, I was like, this is bullshit. And Tada is trying to tell me I'm anti-black. And Tada thinks that he can say that I'm anti-black because he practices urban street dance. This is what I mean by looking at behaviors and really being able to pick them apart and being like, this is completely illogical. Tada was trying to tell me that I'm anti-black because I'm saying that Dave Chappelle's anti-trans bullshit is not okay. A sentiment that is also shared by a lot of trans and queer black people. And then trying to say that they know more about black culture and to be able to school me on this because they do hip-hop dance as a Japanese person. As if black culture equals hip-hop dance. This doesn't make it like you're reducing black culture to hip-hop dance. Like, that's insane. Black culture is everything. Science, mathematics, music, ecology. You can't do this thing that people are doing, where you're trying to say that because I do this like cultural hashtag, I understand an entire culture. I mean, I'm a queer Puerto Rican, but I don't speak Spanish. And there are plenty of people who would say, well, I'm not a real Puerto Rican. But then let's just gather up all the Puerto Ricans who don't speak Spanish, and what are you going to tell us? That we don't know who we are? This is crazy. It's completely insane. So when you fetishize identity, you are a slave. You are a slave. No matter how much money you have, you are a slave. When you fetishize your identity or other people's identities, when you fetishize identity in general, you are a fucking slave. And you make choices based out of that slavery mentality to keep the benefits that you think you're getting from your slavery. And that means you weaponize it against other people. And then you basically have a de facto cult that says that what you're doing is okay. So as a mixed race person, I know the kinds of mixed race I am, but I don't fetishize it. I respect it. But I don't let it enslave me, because I am a human being on the earth, and I must do what is right for the earth. And I must do what is right collectively, regardless of what the names are. You know? I've lived in America my whole life. I've lived in urban centers my whole life in America, primarily surrounded by white people. I have to deal with the stupidity of white culture, but I have tons of white friends. And those white friends are my friends because they're not stupid. We all have cultural baggage that we need to deal with. And we need to deal with it. But there are plenty of people who have gone beyond their cultural baggage to act in ways that are kind and generous and collective. And they're not completely just like colonized anymore in a certain way, right? And if social justice and anti-racism is going to get to a place where it actually helps people and doesn't just ostracize people that don't believe in it or something, or like if it's going to actually get to something that is really liberatory, it needs to go past its own fetishization with blackness and with indigeneity, right? It needs to go past the fetishization phase. It needs to go past this kind of creepy, like reverse domination thing that it's doing, where now we're just supposed to listen and obey all the black people because they've been marginalized. No, you're not. Because there's plenty of black and indigenous people who are addicts and they're crazy, and you shouldn't listen to them. You can care about them, but you shouldn't listen to them, like as in obey what they're saying. That's crazy. Just like if you're white, you shouldn't just only listen to other white people, because that's also crazy. You see what I'm saying? And if you're like a practicing non-dualist, you shouldn't just listen to Tibetan people, because some of those people are fucking crazy. Have you looked at the history of what's his nuts, the guy who fucking founded Naropa Shambhala in Colorado? Chogyam Trungpa? For all of the amazing things that guy wrote about, the dude was he was knucking futs, people. He was a sexual predator. He was a creepazoid. And he was doing it because he was a weird, traumatized dude in a patriarchal society. But that doesn't mean that we should be like, oh, Chogyam Trungpa was just misunderstood. It's like, no, he's just fucking crazy. Okay? So when people show you who they are, you should actually take notice of their behaviors. Not just their racialized identity or some magical gift you think they have that they're going to bestow upon you, And that's the thing that a lot of these people are peddling, like Resma and Bio and Tata, is they are counting on you to feel special in their presence, like they're giving you a magical gift of their ethnicity, like some exotification that you need from them. And they're counting on that. So, as a person who has gone through these various cults and seen this behavior, I cut it out of my life very quickly. Because that is domination and abuse. That's not solidarity. That's crazy. Just like how I cut people out of listening to me. Because there's been plenty of people who fetishize me, who start to become really creepy, past clients. I fire their asses. Because they can't fucking keep up. They're too far gone. They need somebody, they need real therapy, like really hardcore, like therapy where someone monitors you a lot. Okay? What we have to understand is that if we're going to be collectivist people and really work to dismantle the harms of capitalism, we need to be able to call out crazy when we see it and protect ourselves from crazy. Okay? And if you're acting crazy and your community is going, I think it's crazy, you need to be able to understand, are you the one being crazy or is it your community? And that's a very, very stressful situation, because it might be that your community is crazy or it might be that you're crazy. And when I say crazy, I just mean acting a damn fool. When you act like a fool and your behaviors are coming from these fetishized, weaponized, fetishized places, you have to be able to go, oh, I'm not in the right place. I'm not doing the right things. It's not working out. And this is why all this talk about consent and all this, it doesn't really work in a decentralized kind of way. It doesn't work yet because not enough people are sober. When you're not sober, you don't know what I'm talking about. And that means you have to become sober from the addiction to your identities. This is very hard for a lot of people because they've pinned so much of their self-worth on these identities that they think they are. Queerness, gay, lesbian, trans. Do you know how many trans people I've met that are just kind of sociopaths? I'm not saying all trans people are sociopaths. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I've met a lot of trans people that are fucking sociopaths. So you can't just go, oh, well, they're a trans person, so I should just, like, be their friend and do what they, like, listen to them because they have, like, some higher wisdom than I do. And that's crazy. Just like how I've spent all this time talking about my history and my ethnicity, those should not be reasons that you pay attention to me. Oh, well, there's like mixed race, Afro-Puerto Rican, queer, so I should listen to them. No, that's garbage. That doesn't say anything about my behaviors. If you listen to me, you should be listening to me for my behaviors, not for my identities. The identities is like this weird cherry that you can put on top of a cake or you can not. You can just like leave it off to the side. The main thing is that we have to get to the place where we are going through our identities and we are gaining the gifts from those identities, but we have to be very clear which is gifts and which is not. And too much of our social justice thing that we're all trying to do is based on things that are not actually gifts. It's just trauma repackaged. It's like, no, I don't need that. I don't need more addictions. Do you need more addictions? You need more addictions that you then to be addicted to so then you can understand and so then you can have to do the detox process? Do you need to really do that over and over and over again forever? This is the issue that we find ourselves in today's society, where most of people telling you something are also using the relationship to feed some kind of addiction. it's very difficult to find out who to trust. I don't even believe in trust, so who fucking cares? But the point is that most people don't know how to learn or discern what is an addiction and what isn't. And so they're just listening and reading books, and then they go and tell people this is the best book, or this, you got to listen to this person. There's that white lady who talks about shame all the time. She's not Byron Katie, but the other one. I don't know. She's got some fucking Netflix show all about shame. This is the kind of garbage I'm talking about. She doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. But she is talking from a particularly white, middle-class, American woman experience. But that doesn't mean we should think that it's wisdom. But this is the world we live in, where people are trading wisdom for fetishization and feeling like you're on the same page with other people. Because you all have the same narrative and definitions about things, and they're totally wrong. They're the wrong definitions, but you all have them together, so you think you're in the truth. That's what a cult does. That's cult behavior. You can see that in any kind of cult. Even sports games are cults, where everyone is cheering and they all believe that the team is the best. It's like, it's not real. It's just an idea. But when you start to tell people that there is a particular way to behave, but there is that narrative is based on your fucked up behaviors. You're not liberated from your behaviors yet. You just want things to be a certain way. Then you're getting into a very tricky, sticky situation, which we are all in right now, called society, where people are essentially creating micro-religions all the time based on ideas that are not functionally true, but they give them a kind of dopaminergic hit, and then they use it to create an identity, and that identity can't be disagreed with because they feel like they'll die without it. So if you're in that boat, you're fucked. And you're going to have a real hard life, because ain't no sane person going to want to deal with you. But crazy people will want to love you, because if your crazy matches up, you get to have a crazy codependency party. So I just wish more people would understand this thing about identity, because I did this whole thing about ancestors in October, and I really don't think people understood what I was getting at. Is like, yes, you have ancestors, and they give you some part of your identity, but identity itself is not the end goal. It's just like this waypoint that like makes your life more flavorful. It's like spicing up the chicken. Okay? And it's good to spice up the chicken. But when you think that those spices are the only way to spice up the chicken, now you're fucked. Now you're fucked. You're fucked. You're fucked. You're fucked. You're fucked. You're fucked. And other people are trying to have collectivist solidarity actions, and you're over here just lashing out all the time because you want things to be a certain way because your identity is so fucking fragile. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at here, and why I've had to do the things I've had to do, and why I continually am a pretty combative person, and why I don't trust any of you, and why I'm not like offering a whole bunch of stuff. It doesn't. I know you all mean well. I know everybody means well. Everyone's just trying to survive. But the harm that it does when you have not yet detoxed your identities, and when you can't see the complexity of identity, it just makes you a bad dance partner. I don't want to dance with anybody like that. I don't want to dance with people who still think that they are white, or are a sad white person, or an angry indigenous person. I don't want to dance with anybody like that. Like your identity is based on an emotional, like a very limited emotional palette, and this hyper condensed, inaccurate ethnic identitygram, like ideogram. And you're walking around like this, thinking that it's going to get you intimacy and that people are supposed to care about you more. No, it doesn't work like that. People are like, we are making choices based on behaviors and material conditions. We're not making choices based on abstract emotional ideograms that you call your identity. So as I keep getting older and I do more and more research into my ethnic heritages, I have to become more and more clear and lucid and sober. Otherwise, all of that research is like a trap that would make me feel things that are not real, and then I build an identity based on those not real feelings. And then I just try to tell everyone that they're real all the time. And this is something everyone's got to deal with on their own. And this is why it's so really difficult for me to deal with people these days. Because I see how I tried to be so flexible in the past to, work with whatever someone was giving me as a person. I can't do it anymore. I've encountered too much crazy and too much violence masked in marginalization to really be so open and like overly friendly anymore, and vulnerable, this fucking word that everyone talks about. My vulnerability now is in making this kind of art to tell the truth, but to tell the truth in such a way that I don't need anything back from anybody else. And that may seem overly cynical, but when you've dealt with as much crazy people, that I still care about these people. And I was crazy too. I acted a fool when I was an addict. It's true. But when you've dealt with so much of this, at a certain point, you just crave sanity and peace. And that is the road to liberation. And the road to death is this sanity and peace as you die. And I can't talk about this with most people, so I do these weird little podcasts where I can just monologue. Because I have this thing inside me that really wants to be like a performer, but the performing world is so dangerous and filled with crazy people, unfortunately. So that's what I wanted to say for this first part of the talk. When I come back and do Instagram Live, maybe in a few days or next week, I will talk about death practice more. We're going to do non-conceptual practices deeper. We're going to go deeper into non-conceptual practices on Wednesday, December 14th, I believe the next one is. And we're going to start to go deeper into death practice and dream practice and sleep practice and dark practice and all the practices that are about that really match up with the winter solstice. But I hope that, people watch this and, it's going to be a two-parter and I'll put it up on my YouTube and everything. But I just hope that people understand where I'm coming from. And if you don't, it's totally fine. You don't have to. I'm sure most people are going to misinterpret 50 to 70% of what I'm saying. It always happens. It always happens that people only hear what they want to hear. So hopefully you understand what you have to do with your own identities and histories in order to get past your addiction or your victimization from it, and to be a real person who works with behaviors in the real world and try to make collective action for all beings, and not just fetishizing so that you can feel like you have power or that you get your desires met, because actually that shit is baby talk. That's some baby ass talk, and we got to get past that kind of shit because we're all burning up here. So it's starting to rain, so I'm gonna pop off. Blessings to all beings. May all beings be well. Even the beings I called out today, even those motherfuckers that I called out today, I want you to be well and correct your behaviors. I don't think it will happen because there's too much incentive, but let's try to all be in collectivism together, which means that we need to be corrected. That's all. Keep doing it, people. I'll talk to you later. Peace.